as we remember Dr. King's legacy of justice, peace, and equity for all. According to Trinity tradition, we had hundreds of members of the university community who participated in the city of San Antonio's 32nd annual MLK March on Monday, one of the largest marches in the nation. There were 5 busloads of students, plus many people that met us down at the march. It was great. Tonight, in partnership with the City of San Antonio's Martin Luther King Jr. Commission, we are proud to present the 2019 commemorative lecture featuring author Ijeoma Oluo. This partnership allows us to honor Dr. King's legacy with both the Trinity and the San Antonio communities. Since the debut of this lecture more than 20 years ago, we have featured many prominent civil rights leaders, authors, and artists, and the lecture calls for us to think about our histories and our futures and to reflect and engage on what may sometimes be crucial conversations. Before we welcome Ms. Oluo to the podium, I want to briefly describe the format for the evening. During the lecture, we invite members of the audience and those who are joining us via live stream to submit their questions via the displayed link. You can see a link up here where you can submit questions. We will be gathering those, and after the lecture, we will use those for the question and answer period so that we can have some interaction with the audience that way. At the conclusion of the questions and answers, Ms. Oluo will be signing copies of her book in the East Foyer of Laurie Auditorium. It's now my pleasure to introduce Kania Russell, a Trinity senior who will introduce Ms. Oluo. Kania is a history major who is minoring in education, and currently she serves as the president for Trinity's Black Student Union. After graduation this spring, Kania plans to attend graduate school to earn a master's degree in education. I want to thank Kania for her leadership on our campus and for introducing our speaker tonight.
Hey, good evening. I am truly honored to have the opportunity to introduce the Martin Luther King Jr. 2019 commemorative lecturer, Ijeoma Oluo, author of So You Want to Talk About Race. Ijeoma has made and continues to make a tremendous impact on the conversation surrounding race in a time when such conversations can feel scary, uncomfortable, and even divisive. I was first introduced to her work when Elle, our director for the Diversity and Inclusion Office, told me about her commitment to social justice and gave me a copy of this book. So as a student leader for a group of predominantly Black students on this campus, I find myself often frustrated when entering conversations of advocacy for myself and other Black and brown students doesn't reap the results that I know are much needed and the change that is much needed. So now, when faced with those experiences and those conversations that are frustrating, I turn to one of my favorite quotes from this book. And the quote reads, "We cannot talk our way out of a racially oppressive system. We can talk our way into understanding, and we can use that understanding to act." So You Want to Talk About Race is inspiring to me because in it, Ms. Oluo provides a guide on how to speak truthfully, powerfully, and effectively with people on all sides of the conversation about race. She speaks so powerfully to the responsibility and the power we all have in overcoming the legacy of racism in this country. Ijeoma Oluo is a Seattle-based writer, speaker, and internet yeller. She's the author of the New York Times bestseller, So You Want to Talk About Race, published in January by Seal Press. Named one of the Roots 100 Most Influential African Americans in 2017, one of the most influential people in Seattle by Seattle Magazine, one of the 50 most influential women in Seattle by Seattle Met, and winner of the 2018 Feminist Humanist Award by the American Humanist Society, Oluo's work focuses primarily on issues of race and identity, feminism, social and mental health, social justice, the arts, and personal essay. Her writing has been featured in The Washington Post, NBC News, Elle Magazine, Time, The Stranger, and The Guardian, among other outlets. I am thrilled we have the opportunity to listen to her speak tonight. Please help me in welcoming Ijeoma Oluo to the podium.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. It has been so wonderful to be here. I am a little soft-spoken, so if I start moving a little bit away from the microphone and you can't hear me, let me know, and I'll try to lean back in. It is hard to be tall and soft-spoken when it comes to microphones that are affixed to a certain height. I just want to say, first of all, I have had an absolute amazing time here. It has been wonderful. I have spent all day on campus. Wait, sorry, I have a battery stuck to the magnet on my watch. I don't even know where this battery came from. Is somebody missing a battery? That was unexpected. Like I was saying, I've had a wonderful time on campus. I spent all morning with students, all afternoon with students. We got together and talked a lot about race. One of the things that I have loved, and this is before I dive into my lecture, is to show that when we talk about race, it actually can be healing, that we can come together, and it is, while still not my favorite thing to talk about, can be very necessary, and you can come out better for these discussions. And I want to thank the students who participated in discussion with me today and were so open and honest. It is scary to talk about these things, especially when you're talking directly about how they impact you and you're living it right then and there. To take that leap of faith, to trust your peers, to trust me, to trust the space, and to invest in your peers in that way is something I'm really grateful for. So I really do want to take just a second to recognize the students who gave me so much time today and really, I think, gave more to their campus by creating an environment that is more open to these discussions. So thank you. And so now, onto my lecture. It's interesting, too. I give a lot of speeches in January and February, but rarely are they called lectures. My kids get a lot of lectures from me, but they don't pay me. So maybe I need to start charging them. What does it mean to honor Dr. King in 2019? This is a question I asked last year. What does it mean to honor Dr. King in 2018? And I think that, especially in this day and age, it's something that we're asking a lot more. Dr. King is invoked regularly. Invoked never more than in January and February, but still regularly. And as we reach harder times, we find ourselves wondering, where does Dr. King fit? And this has been a very hard few years. For many people of color, it's been very hard longer than few years. But it's been even harder these last few years. And I do think that this is a difficult time to be thinking about the legacy of Dr. King and trying to celebrate the legacy of Dr. King. I think that many of us would have hoped that we would have more to celebrate in 2019 than we do. It has been very tough emotionally, but it has also been tough in ways that can be measured. We have legislation right now that puts at risk a lot that we have gained over the years. We have social norms that are being eroded and changed. As a parent, I'm scared. As a Black woman, I'm scared. I see hatred being normalized in a way that it hasn't been likely since the time of Dr. King. Oppression has always been normalized in our society, but you at least were supposed to feel bad about it, right? You were supposed to feel at least like you had to whisper the things you were thinking. or come up with code words for the things that you were thinking. But now, even our heads of state don't feel like they have to whisper the things they are thinking. And I see from the mouths of babes words that I would have never dreamed of saying, words that my peers would have never dreamed of saying. We are a part of a world where now there is a large, vibrant group for you if you feel like hating people who are different. And you don't have to meet in secret. You don't have to wear a hood. You can even run for office and win. And so, in this time, when many of us are asking, how did we go from having the first Black president to this? And did we actually go as far as we thought? Where do we fit Dr. King in this time? I would say that first I want to talk a little bit, before we talk about who Dr. King could be in 2019, I think it's incredibly important that we talk about who Dr. King actually was in his time, because I do think that there is a lot of effort to divorce Dr. King from who he was. I see a lot of people of color here, a lot of Black people here. How many of you have been chastised when talking about race and told that Dr. King would have done it differently? Right? I'm told this every day. If you want to check my mentions on Twitter, if you had access to my email box, according to many people, Dr. King would be so distraught with me and the things I am saying on the internet. I'm saying very un-king-like things. And it's interesting to me, because no one saying this to me would actually like Dr. King. Dr. King was a revolutionary. I was on a college campus, an Ivy League college campus, and there was discussion about Dr. King's speech patterns. And someone asked, why do you think Dr. King was so effective in his speech? And an attendee raised his hand and said, well, he wasn't threatening to white people. All he wanted was just for us to live in harmony. He was basically saying, we will fit into your life and your culture. And I was stunned because I was wondering, that's the threat, that we would come in, that we would be there. Dr. King wrote his speech, I Have a Dream, at a time when people would pour acid into swimming pools in order to stop Black people from swimming with them. So saying, my kid is going to hold hands with your kid one day, is not saying it's going to be magically beautiful. It's saying we are here, and we are here to change the way in which you see us. We are here to be seen as whole people, and your kids are going to love us whether you want them to or not. And that's incredibly revolutionary. It's incredibly threatening to the status quo of the time. I would say it's incredibly threatening now. Dr. King was a structural thinker. A lot of times people like to think he had a dream, and he loved people, and that was it. He was a very learned man who was very driven by the ways in which our systems work against people. And he went after systems. The Montgomery bus boycott was not to win over the hearts and minds of bus drivers in Montgomery, right? It was to bring a system to its knees, to let a system know that regardless of what they felt about their passengers, they could not function and treat Black people the way they were treating them. He did not go, I'm going to go door to door and hug every bus driver and hug every white passenger until they see that we deserve to sit where we want to sit. What he said was, this is part of a system that regularly dehumanizes and disenfranchises Black people, and I'm going to go to this system, I'm going to hit this system where it hurts, and we are going to make change. When he joined up with unions, when he started talking about labor, when he started talking about the economy, when he started talking about war, he was looking at the ways in which systems work against Black people and people of color. And he was talking about the ways in which we interact with those systems. Dr. King believed that white America had a responsibility to deconstruct white supremacy. And that in order to deconstruct it, we actually had to bring the problem to white America. It's interesting to me often how people ask when we're going to have the next Dr. King. And I wonder, we were grateful enough to have him once. We were lucky enough to have him once, and he was murdered. So who's the next white person who's going to decide that they want to change their culture? That maybe we don't sacrifice more of our leaders to change. He talked regularly about the need to bring the problem to white America, and that only when white supremacy was unbearable to white America would it change. Because the truth is that a white supremacist power structure holds the power. And we are powerful as Black people, as people of color, and yet we are systemically disempowered. And we need allies, active allies, who are willing to understand that the next leader they should be looking for in deconstructing white supremacist systems should be their own. Dr. King was a smart, ever-changing, committed man. He loved Black people, he loved humanity, and I can only imagine what he would have gone on to accomplish had he not been taken from us. We are trying our best to achieve what he would have accomplished had he not been taken from us. But even taken out of the historical context, I can say with confidence that Dr. King is only revered as a hero to masses in America because he's dead. Dr. King was targeted by our government, targeted by everyday citizens, targeted by the FBI, targeted by the Klan. He was public enemy number one every day of his adult life. And we like to look at these things and go, tisk, tisk. Oh, people were so racist back then. But the truth is that in 2019, we can't have a Black woman get up on the Senate floor and talk about race without being demonized. Right? Can you imagine if a Black woman shut down the transportation system for a city? How that would go? Would it go better than it went for Dr. King? Would we actually even see the systemic change that Dr. King saw? It's important to recognize that when you feel you are removed from the situation, you can romanticize how you would have reacted. It is very easy to look at it like you're watching a film and say, I would have been the hero in this story. But the truth is that similar things are happening right now, right next to you. And if you aren't acting the way you imagine you would have acted next to Dr. King, you would not have been the hero in that story, and you're not the hero in that story today. So now that we are pulling Dr. King into the context of today, what does today really look like? We've talked a little bit about the political environment, but even looking at numbers right now, the average black household has 1/13 the net financial worth of the average white household. The average Hispanic household has 1/11 the net financial worth of the average white household. Nationally, we don't monitor numbers for Indigenous people, but it's likely at or worse than numbers for Black Americans. Right now, we have more Black people in prison than, definitely more than in King's time. Not only more Black people in prison, but a higher percentage of Black people in prison. We have Black mothers dying in childbirth at unprecedented rates. We have Black communities who are being terrorized by police forces. We have realized that the Huxtable promise of if you work hard, it will be okay, hasn't turned out. Even Cosby didn't turn out. It was like a mirage that we were looking at that was maybe leading us in the wrong direction. And it lifted, and we are still very much in the desert. And as we confront these issues of racial oppression and racist brutality, we are met with force. No, we are not met with fire hoses, but we are met with pepper spray. We are not met with dogs, but we are met with tasers and tanks. There has never been a greater need for the words and work of Dr. King than today. I do not see a time in our history since that of Dr. King where we have not been in as much need for moral clarity and strength that we needed in that time. So if we pull the work and words of Dr. King into today, how do we do that? I would say first, let's honor Dr. King by honoring who he was and being steadfast in our efforts to reclaim his legacy from those who would distort and exploit it to silence and gaslight people of color who are speaking about the issues that are happening today. Do not let people turn Dr. King into the Santa Claus of the civil rights movement. Do not let him be used against other Black people. Do not allow him to be juxtaposed against the great Malcolm X, whom he respected. Do not say Dr. King wouldn't do that when we know he would do that. Keep your motivation in your heart. Always know why this matters to you. I was saying earlier to the students, it is very easy to know that you are angry and to know who you are angry at or what system you're angry at. And in that, it can be very easy to forget what you're angry for. I am angry. If anyone wants to call me an angry Black woman, I am an angry Black woman. And I am angry because I love myself. I am angry because I love my community. And I love all communities of color. And I am angry at seeing what I love being threatened, being trampled on. And I have to remember that that is why I am angry. And it will sustain you. In times when all you can see are oppressors, you have to remember the freedom you're fighting for. At the same time, keep your focus on the system. You will make emotional pleas. We are motivated by emotion. We are motivated by love. We are motivated by fear. And it is important to engage with that. But the work we do must be done in the system. And this means that we must step a little bit away from talk of intention. I am tired of hearing about people's intentions. I am tired of hearing that people mean well. I am tired of being told that someone doesn't have a racist bone in their body, as if it's something that could be excised. Oh, I had it. And then I went to the doctor and they took it out. It's no longer there. I do not care about your intentions if they are not informing better actions. And if I walk next to you and I hit you, if I say I did not mean to hit you, it does not make that hit hurt less. But it does mean that I have to start being more careful with my arms. And when we talk about race, if I say that you hit me, you saying you did not mean to hit me does not make it hurt less. Especially when you stood by when I was hit before by someone else, and someone else the time before that, and when everyone around me who looks like me has been hit, and you decided to not pay attention to what you were doing with your arms, the discussion then does not become about your fundamental right to swing your arms at will. It becomes about you living your intentions, and if you do not want to hit people, how you will be more careful. And if you do not want to hit people, how you will make amends to the people that you have hit. It is important that we start looking at how we interact with systems of power. Because in these interactions, we are hitting people. How we choose to engage, what we choose to let slide. If you open a textbook and it's reinforcing white supremacy and you aren't bringing it up, you are hitting someone. If you have a vote you can cast that will bring a little more equality to your corner of this country and you don't cast it, you are hitting someone. And you can tell me you don't mean to. I do not care. Because if I didn't mean to isn't followed up with, and I will do better, and I am doing better, and this is what I will do to make amends, it means nothing. Find out where you have power in the system, where the system needs you, and apply pressure there. It is very easy to feel disempowered when we talk about race. And I want to take a moment to tell you that that's by design. Oh, there's another battery here. I'm going to move that before. That's by design. When we talk about race, I'm asking a question here of the white people in the audience. When someone says, so-and-so is a racist, what are some of the images that pop into your mind? Trump? The KKK? Charlottesville, right? We think Nazis. We think of extreme acts of violence, right? We think of people who are literally arming up to commit genocide. But when we live in a society that expects 1 in 3 black men to go to prison, when we live in a society that has the vast majority of black and brown people living in poverty, when we live in a society where if you have a black-sounding name, you're 4 times less likely to get a job interview, what do you really think is killing people of color in this country? Is it the Klan? No. Even in the post-Reconstruction era, what do you think was killing people of color in this country? I mean, the Klan was trying, but it still actually wasn't number 1. It is important that we understand that There is a reason why the only narratives we have to talk about racism and racial oppression in this country are virulent, hate-filled racists who let themselves be known by shouting the N-word at everyone and trying to literally murder people. Because we have them, and they are bad, and then we have all the good people. And what this does is it stops us from looking at, A, what's the real problem? What can we actually do to make a measurable change in the lives of people of color today? It's a lot simpler, trust me, than trying to get a Klan member to love people of color. It's a lot simpler to put your money in the right places, to cast the right vote, to have some difficult conversations with your uncle, unless your uncle is a Klan member. That would be difficult. That dichotomy of if you are racist, you are a Klan member, or you're not racist, it also stops us from having discussions with our peers about the ways in which they are participating in racist systems and upholding white supremacy. Because when we try to say, hey, that thing you did was racist, you're calling someone a Klan member. And I've heard this, and I'm sure that many other people of color in this room have heard this when they try to talk about race. What do you mean? What, I'm not a Klan member. I'm not trying to kill anyone. No, that's not what I said. If you were trying to kill someone, we probably wouldn't be sitting having this calm conversation right now. I'm saying what you're doing is racist. That is by design. And if you find it really hard to hear the ways in which you're participating in harmful systems, and you find yourself getting defensive, first know that's by design. And if you find yourself as a person of color feeling like you don't have the right to bring things up because it's not important enough, it's not big enough, people have told you there's nothing to see here, know that that's by design. But these are the most important things you can do. We normalize systems of oppression in our everyday interactions with the system. We support systems of oppression in our everyday interactions with the system. We have very limited power to stop what Donald Trump does. But we have much more power to stop the next Donald Trump from getting his start at a school board or a city council. We have a lot more power in making sure that our children create social environments where that sort of talk and thinking is unacceptable, where they would never dream of voting hatred into office. But we are told not to look at that. And so next time you hear someone say, that's not a big deal, or don't we have bigger things to worry about? Recognize that these are the building blocks of oppression. That every step of the way we have been told it's not a big deal until one day it is a big deal. If we had a society where we believed in the dignity of people of color enough that we didn't make racist jokes at happy hours, that would be a society that believed in the dignity of people of color enough to not vote white supremacists into office. It all matters. We have to know the moral underpinnings of our work. And this is incredibly important. It's really easy to rally around one specific threat, one specific danger. It's very easy to see one issue and go, this is bad, and we are going to come together around this issue. Oftentimes that happens magically when the issue impacts you, or looks like it could impact you. But understand that if you say that you believe in freedom from oppression, there are no conditions to that. You don't get to say you only believe in freedom from oppression for able-bodied people, or for cisgender people, or for straight people, or for Black people who are nice to you. You believe in it because You believe in it. You believe in it because it is right, and it is non-negotiable. And if you are a white person who thinks that there is anything a person of color could do to make you no longer believe in their right to freedom and equality, you never believed in freedom and equality. And if there's any segment of a population of color that you believe doesn't deserve equal rights, you don't believe in equal rights. These are absolutes. Be willing to grow and change. Dr. King was forever growing and changing. He was not only invested in his work, but he was interested in his work. He was always trying to figure out what he didn't know. He was in the midst of great change when he died. He was exploring new avenues with which oppressions intersect and trying to build new coalitions to deconstruct oppressive systems. He was becoming even more of a force to be reckoned with, and he paid with his life. We have to be willing to grow and change. And as I alluded to earlier, be intersectional. I wouldn't say Dr. King was a paragon of intersectionality, but I would say in his time, for what many would recognize as some homophobia, some misogyny, he worked more closely with gay people, with atheists, and with women than many other leaders did at the time. And he was constantly reevaluating what it meant to be dedicated to struggle, regardless of what group you were in. We must take that into this century and be even more dedicated to intersectionality. We must learn from the example of the ability to grow and change, and to be open to the idea that maybe you might be harming someone even in your efforts to gain freedom for others. Be willing to be uncomfortable. I would say it's pretty safe to say that Dr. King was not comfortable in his struggle. He was willing to go to jail. He was willing to die. And I'm not saying, please be willing to die. Don't, please. But at least get uncomfortable. Resistance is a muscle that must be exercised. And when you first get out and start doing the work, you will feel sore. But there's a reason why, and I'm not going to go into a whole lecture about how our government systemically locked away an entire generation of activist leaders to make sure that we would not know what resistance felt like. But just so you know, they did. So we've got some muscles to build up. It gets easier. As someone who makes everyone uncomfortable everywhere she goes, it gets easier. Be prepared for pushback. It's been really interesting in these last couple of years because there's been so much hand-wringing as to where we got where we are. How did we get here? How did we get from Obama to Trump? Did we ask for too much? Did we push too hard? We're definitely, there's a lot of young, angry white men who don't want to learn that Black Lives Matter, and maybe we shouldn't have been so vocal and we wouldn't be where we are. And it's always interesting to me because, of course, we're facing a backlash. Of course. Did we think a 400-year-old system was just going to go, here, have it. Destroy it as you will. It's fine. I'm not invested in this at all. I'm not, my kids aren't. It's totally cool. I'm going to totally reevaluate the way I see myself in the world and give up these opportunities and this privilege. That's great. I've been waiting for you to come take this off my hands. The election of President Obama was, if anything, a symbolic threat to white America, right? The threat to identity of white America. that America would look like you forever, even though we built America. Of course there would be pushback. But you know what the answer to that is? I'll tell you what it isn't. It isn't deciding to take a step back and rest. Do you think that pushback's not still waiting for us? We barely scratched the surface. Literally, all we got was a symbolic change. The metrics, the outlook for people of color in this country didn't change. The systems of power didn't fundamentally change. Literally, all we got was the idea that it was possible. And this is the backlash we got. So if you're ready to throw in the towel now, because some dudes on Reddit got together with their Pepe the Frog memes and elected a walking trash bag, you have no idea what pushback looks like. And we have to be prepared and see that pushback as a sign that we're making progress. There's a reason why we didn't see this 20 years ago. We weren't a threat. We are now. So recognize what it is and keep pushing through it. Know the moral underpinnings of the work you're doing and know that it is right. And know that there are lives on the line that cannot wait. Dr. King knew we could not wait. He wrote a whole book that said a little something like that. Why we can't wait? We still can't wait. And it will get harder. And I say especially for white people in the audience who want to be a part of a solution, know that it gets a lot harder than anything you have ever known in the struggle for justice. But know that it is literally killing us. So if it is killing us, the least you can do is learn how to get uncomfortable and make your peers uncomfortable. There should be no safe space for white supremacy. In conclusion, I want to talk a little bit about the ways in which people often talk about Dr. King, and they talk about him a lot in terms of love and peace. And I will say Dr. King wasn't necessarily about love and peace. He was about love and nonviolence. And there's a difference. Nonviolence is not complacency. He believed in our right to be free from violence and our obligation to not perpetrate violence against others. And he also understood that violence is more than just physical violence. He saw violence when the light went out in a child's eyes, when they were told that they couldn't live their dreams. He saw violence when people gave up hope, when they stopped looking for work because they knew there was none for someone like them. He saw violence in the ways in which people of color were dehumanized and discriminated against every single day. We have to recognize that as violence. And I would say that on college campuses, this debate is more prevalent than ever. And in fact, it kind of disturbs me that it's still up for debate as to what violence is for students of color on campuses. Words of hate are violence. White supremacy is violence. Exclusion is violence. And if there's one space where we need to say it will be nonviolent, it will be on college campuses. And so look at the violence that is being perpetrated against minority populations on campus and say, here is where we adhere to nonviolence, and we will treat discrimination and aggression against our minority populations as violence. Not only will we have the same repercussions we would have for violence, but we will work on providing the same healing that we would provide to other victims of violence. And in that, remember the love for ourselves. And I'm speaking a lot right now of people of color in the room. The hurts that you face, and especially these last few years, the violence you have faced, it should not still be happening. It is not okay. I am outraged for all of us. We are all more important than white supremacy. We all matter more than white supremacy, even if white supremacy does not want you to believe that. Your healing matters more. And I hope that allies in this room will look at taking some of the burden of fighting white supremacy off of our shoulders so that we can focus on the even more important task of loving each other and healing each other. And I hope that in 2019, that we make that our goal. That if you are allied with communities of color, you are working to create and protect spaces where communities of color can come together and heal together and fortify each other. And you will take on that work of fighting the system that you have more power in than we do. And if you are people of color, I hope that you will hold space and love for yourself and know that you deserve that, and you deserve rest, you deserve community, you deserve to be heard. And I hope that together we can get a little closer to the dream that Dr. King had. Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you for those great marks. You have some wonderful questions here that I think will really resonate with the kind of comments you've been making. So Bria, an alum, says, why do you think black people, people of color, support Trump? What do they get out of it?
I mean, all 500 of them. I would say this, that we're often told to make a lot of bargains in life. We are given a lot of stories to explain why the world is the way it is. And many people have to get by, and they build their life around this. Sometimes it can really be too painful to see things the way they are. There is an overriding myth in this country that there is no system at work, that you can get far if you work hard, and the people of color who aren't getting far aren't working hard. But you have to look at what that means about all people of color, what you're literally saying about all people of color. But sometimes that's all too painful. And oftentimes it's very easy to just go along with that myth because at least you feel like you have some power. Also, there's a lot of misogyny at play. And I would say it was not a surprise to me that while the vast majority of black women did what needed to be done, and still an overwhelming majority of black men did, not as many black men did. Because sometimes you have to weigh, what's at bigger risk here? My power as a black person or my power as a man? Do I want to see a country that has a woman as a president? What does that mean about me? And I would say that we saw that with Hispanic voters as well. Many more Hispanic men voting for Trump. And so we had competing power structures at play. I would say that I try not to focus on a few people of color who have made whatever bargains they have made. Because when you have over 90% of black voters voting one certain way, the percentage that didn't weren't going to turn this election. And I would really rather we focus on the majority of white voters who decided to throw their lot in with white supremacy and make that change. Because that's really where the problem lies.
Okay, thank you. This is from Ariana, a student. You said in your book that by existing in a white supremacist system as a white person, you are racist. How do I communicate this to white people without their getting mad?
I mean, I would say we really need to stop caring quite so much about whether or not white people get mad. I'm not saying we have to try to go out and ruin the days of white people everywhere, but I will say this. The first time I was ever made painfully aware of what my blackness meant in society, no one walked me through that nicely. No one held my hand and explained how that worked. No one broke it to me gently that this was how the world worked for me. So grown adults can handle hearing what whiteness means and how they participate in it. And if you can't handle hearing it, you're of very little use to the struggle, because that's step number one. I would say if you want to fast forward past all the emotion, focus more on the interaction with the system. It's a white supremacist system. And just say, you are upholding the system. We can cut people's intentions, we can cut discussion of who someone is or how they are out of it completely. Because the truth is that if we acted differently, we would be different. So if you want to, you can just focus on that. But I would say that we spend a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of time worrying about how white people, how we can softly handhold white people out of white supremacy. And all that is more white supremacy, right? The notion that people would need to be comfortably led out of their participation in the oppression of others by the people they oppress. It's kind of screwed up, you know? So I would say I'm glad that white people are asking how to talk to other white people. You talk however you want to talk. You work that out. But maybe spend more time thinking about the care with which you're going to talk with other people of color and think about and engage with other people of color than how you're going to sorry to break this to you, but you're part of a white supremacist system. Like, I don't know why that has to be gently broken in 2019.
Okay, I'm going to combine two questions here that are related. One is a community member named Megan, and she said, what is your vision of a university that fully embraces diversity? And there's another one from Jeremy who works at Trinity and says, do you feel there is a responsibility for an elite, selective, predominantly white institution to push the conversation of race in their education? And if so, how could it happen?
Oh, yeah. So I'm going to take the second part first. Yes, absolutely. This is where many of our most privileged leaders of the country come from. I was at an Ivy League school recently and was appalled at the lack of knowledge that the professors had on issues of race. You shouldn't be able to teach any subject in college and not have a good understanding of how race functions in society and in your field. And I don't care if you never see a student of color, because you are teaching their peers. You are teaching the people who will be working with them, who will be hiring them, who will be firing them, whose kids will be going to school with their kids. It is in everything. I've run into chemistry majors who are asking how they can function as the only black person in their chemistry lab. And their teacher thinks that race has nothing to do with chemistry. So I would say it's really important for me, and I want an institution to look fundamentally at first at what it values. Not only what it values as far as its student body, but what it values academically. How it came to define credentials. What texts it reveres versus others. What they look for in professors. As a writer, I'm constantly challenging editors to look at what they consider good language and good writing. I have my career because I grew up in a white major city, and I write like someone who grew up in a white major city. But there are Black writers who are writing like they grew up in Black communities who will never get published because someone at a university decided that that was against the style guide. We absolutely have to look at the entire system, and this means looking at your texts, looking at your tenure process, looking at your admissions process, looking at your recruitment process, looking at your academic programs, looking at your housing programs, looking at your financial aid programs, looking at what programs you decide to have on campus in the first place. It needs from the ground up constant reevaluation. And I would love universities to start asking, what don't I know? Right? What don't I know? And ask the people who are primarily impacted, who have been doing the work, who have been fighting. Ask the person on campus who is the person you keep hoping you're not in a meeting with because they're the one that's always bringing up the things that are really uncomfortable. Go to them because they know something you don't know. And I would love a university that was as dedicated to knowledge on issues of race as they are to just about every other subject. It always amazes me the absolute lack of curiosity, academic curiosity, that I find on college campuses when it comes to race. I sat across from a Harvard professor, and I was literally telling him, you need to read these books to understand this. No. Why don't you just tell me instead? Like, you are a professor. Would you let a student do this? Would you tell a student? Oh, no, you want the Cliff Notes version. And you're a professor. What are you doing? The truth is even when it comes to race, I am always amazed at how little even academic study universities give to race. Any other issue that was killing as many Americans as systemic racism kills would have multi-million dollars of funding and research. We don't even A/B test anti-racist theory. We don't look at what works best in a workplace, this method or this method. We don't even look at what works best in an education system, this method or this method. There are actual things we could be learning about how we teach our children, how we police populations, how we build infrastructure. We could actually be doing studies with money and funding, and we don't value it. And so for me, I would love a university that really looked at the issue of racism in America as seriously as I look at any other major issue in this country, and looks at the study of race in America as something as worthy of respect as engineering, as is English, as all of these other places, and they don't. I have only spoken at one college this year that has a dedicated race studies department. Only one. That's so saddening to me. Why? This is the biggest issue we have in this country. We don't even have departments for it. But that also means that it's something that parents need to start looking for and demanding. Your child, no matter their race, is not getting a good education if they're not getting an education on race and race theory. Alumni need to be looking at this, right? This is something that we need to be looking at when we say, is this a good school? There is no good school that does not dedicate itself to racial justice. And it takes more than just the population of color at the school saying that.
Thank you. So these are a couple of questions that are a little more personal. In the chapter about microaggressions, this is Chikanma, a student. In the chapter about microaggressions, you wrote about not fitting in as a 15-year-old. As an adult, how did you go about finding your place and community?
This has definitely come out a few times today. There's a couple of things I would say. For Black people, especially when you're younger, there's a very, very narrow vision of what Blackness can be that is imposed upon you. And it means that there are a lot of Black people who find themselves kind of floating and lost. That fades as you get older. Community grows and expands. You have to put some effort into it. And unfortunately, like where I live in Seattle, it's rapidly gentrifying, and that means that our traditional Black neighborhoods are being scattered. So it's actually harder to be in community today than it was even when I was writing the book. And I would say that it is really important first to know who you are and know that can't be taken away from you, right? If you are a Black person, know that you are Black, and that means everything you do is Black. And you have the right to be proud of your Blackness in every space you're in. And then seek out community that has shared interest with you. And there is one, right? I am a kind of an oddball Black person. There are plenty of oddball Black people. I have found them. The internet is great for that. We are just as varied as any other population. So know that, find it, know that you have that space, prioritize that time. It can be really easy, especially when you're a busy student, to think, I will get time with my community later, but you absolutely have to, even when you feel like you're dragging yourself because you've got a paper due and you have all this stuff, it is so important to recharge in community. Be open about your desire for community. Sometimes it's really hard to say, I need a community. It's really hard to say, will you let me in? I need other Black people in my life, or I need other Asian people in my life. But I have yet to see anyone turned away from that honest admission that they need it. People still come up to me today, people my age and older come up to me and say, can you help me find where the Black people in Seattle are? I really need them. And I don't judge, I get it. It's hard. And it's probably hard on this campus. So I think we actually need to be willing to say that more, to put ourselves out there and say, I need community. Who is willing to be in community with me? And then prioritize that time, even if it's just once a month, to have a space where you can breathe and be yourself. Find it. It does exist. And I would say, the thing about when you're in high school, when you're in college, is you're in this kind of small bubble, and it can feel like the rest of your life, you're never going to find a group. But there is a huge world out there. And your people exist. And you're never going to be too odd or too weird or too different to not find a few people who are that odd and want to hang out with you. But prioritize it as part of your mental health. Just be open with your needs. Voice them. I think we're really afraid to just say, I need people. And you gotta just start saying it. And I would say most communities of color I meet in anywhere I go understand that feeling. Even if you have a whole group of friends, you get that feeling because you're still a minority in the population. It doesn't feel foreign. I have yet to see someone walk up to a group of people of color and say, I need community, I don't have one, and have them be like, can't relate, don't know what that's like. So we have to kind of humble ourselves a little bit and be willing to take that risk.
Okay, this is great. So we're nearing the end of our time. I want to, before I ask this last question, just thank you for being here. I know that the time that you spent with students in groups today made a difference in terms of helping them have that sense of community, so we really do appreciate your being here. The last question, yes. The last question comes from Sasha, also someone who works at Trinity, and she wants to know, as someone who engages in really important but exhausting work, how do you avoid burnout?
Here's the thing, often for me is, I am a Black woman, and that doesn't go away when I'm resting, if I could take a spa day, I'm still a Black woman. All the time, if I wasn't doing this work, I would be in a cubicle trying to keep my mouth shut and not get fired. So that notion, that self-care notion, that idea of burnout, it's foreign to me. And I think it's foreign to a lot of people of color. I would say every day that I get to speak my truth where so many other people of color can't safely do so is a blessing. And I am aware of that. And it keeps me going. On a more practical level, for me, I have 2 kids at home. And you can only get so burned out when you have a teenager who's like, Mom, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, Mom, 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 Mom. Like, all day. Like, I have literally been in tears writing about something horrible that happened and had my kid be like, look what I can do, look at this kick, look at this, look at this. And, it really kind of stops. I would say, not only the practical reasons that I can't let my children starve to death because I spent too much time talking about racism in America, but they remind me that I'm fighting for them and for children like them. And in my love and care for them, I am also fighting for them. And I think it's important that we recognize that our love and care for ourselves is fighting for ourselves, especially as people of color, and that at the end of the day, we have to be standing. We can't deconstruct this system and be lost at the same time. What are we fighting for then? And so those moments we take to be in community, to care for those we love, and to care for ourselves are also revolutionary acts, because at the end of the day, what a white supremacist system wants is control over our entire beings. And every way in which we take back control, and even if that means I am not marching today, I am making pancakes today because my kids want pancakes, is a revolutionary act. And you have to let your needs and your community needs guide you more than anything else. And that will refresh you, because your body will tell you, your family will tell you when you need to stop for a minute and rest. And then you just have to listen to that, because you have to know that you matter.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ijeoma.